Hey, folks, welcome to the Battles of the First World War podcast. Joining us this evening is Mr. Brett Hawks, a fellow resident of Cape Ann here in Massachusetts. Brett was brought to my attention a few months ago when he gave a talk at a local club one evening in the early summer. The subject of the talk was how Brett has bicycled his way across France, following in his grandfather's World War I footsteps. Well, not a shocker. You can bet I attended that talk, and it was a fantastic evening. And as I listened, one of my first thoughts was, I've got to get this gentleman on the podcast to tell his story to the podcast community. And so here we are. All right. Brett, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Sure. Well, thanks. I'm on. Actually, this is a big moment for me. This is my first podcast in my whole life.
Yay.
I'm
Right.
73 years, right?
Well, that's awesome. So I'm going to tell you, I can't promise fame and fortune, but
No, it's all right. It's all right. It's great to be here and great to communicate. I think why don't I just start out, give a little brief background on my grandfather, and then how I got involved, and then I'll talk about the trip and all of the nuances of the trip, and
Absolutely.
we'll go through it sort of methodically. But please ask questions. I always leave stuff out, and I love to be prompted on certain things. So all my life, I had known my grandfather was in the First World War. He was pretty consistent with most soldiers that came back from war. It was pretty horrific over there, and they didn't talk about it very much. But I did know that he had received the Croix de Guerre, which is a fairly prestigious honor, and that he had been wounded. That I had known. And he didn't live near me, so I sort of knew him as a faraway grandfather.
Okay.
And then he died when I was 16 years old. So sort of fast forward through my life, I knew that he had taken a camera, and actually I'll show you this camera right now. This is the camera that he took. This camera has been all around France through all of the war and all of the pictures that were taken, and it made it back to my home.
Stunning.
But we knew he had taken pictures. He had put the pictures in a photo album. And he did it in a very chronological manner, meaning from when he left Weymouth, where he grew up. He graduated from Harvard, and he did not get drafted. He entered into the war voluntarily. He felt it was a very worthwhile effort.
Okay.
And went over to France in 1917. That album was put together by him when he came back from the war, and it's been sort of with my father and my mother forever. And I knew it was around, but there was so many things that go on in your life, and I never really looked at it. Anyway, my parents passed away, and I got this photo album, and I'm retired, and I don't like sitting around, so I started going through the photo album. Make a long story short, the pictures were fantastic. They were pictures not just of war, but of bombed out churches, hungry, starving French women on the side of the road, his friends eating at a mess hall, just a wide range. French soldiers, how well they're dressed, and how they had beautiful uniforms. He did observation posts. He took tons of military pictures. Anyway, he had it in an album, and the album had on each photograph, it had a town where it was taken.
Amazing.
And I said, I bet if I went back to France, I could find some of these photographs because I have the town. And it was kind of a lark. I didn't really think it was going to be much of a serious effort. But I organized myself, and I said, I'm going to do it by bike. And I did it by bike for two reasons. One's a selfish reason. I love to bike. It's like saying,
Fair.
it's like following your grandfather playing golf or something. It's that,
Yeah.
it's that passionate for me. And you can get places. The other thing about being on a bike, you're close to the people. You're not driving up in a Peugeot rental car and getting out of the car. You're you're sort of with them. You're next to them. You go up to their front door and you're not as threatening. And it was really kind of an icebreaker. That's what it turned out to be. I didn't know that was going to happen. So I said I'm going to organize a trip starting in the east of France where he trained and
Okay.
work my way to the different places and then the final fight that he did, which was in Cantigny in the Somme, where he would receive the Croix de Guerre and was wounded.
Okay.
So I did this with very low, very, very low expectations and thinking it was going to be a bike trip and maybe I'd get a couple of photographs, maybe.
Right.
My very first day was like an eye opener. The very first day, so many things hit me, and I found so many things that I had no expectations of ever finding. And the first day, I knocked on a farmhouse. In that farmhouse, my grandfather had stayed in a barn. The guy who lived in the farmhouse knew all about the American soldiers. He had a big box, and he had this Lucky Strike package
Man.
in one of the boxes. He had helmets. He had all kinds of things. He took me up into his barn. In his barn, the American soldiers had written notes on the barn wall. They had done mathematics because they were figuring out, their mathematics. So it was just the first day I found a cemetery that he had taken a picture of, and I found where he lived in a barn. And then on my way back to the hotel, which I was just so delighted, I found this other house that he lived in, and just before he did the invasion into Cantigny.
Wow.
So that's what the whole trip turned into. It really turned into finding the photograph, first going to the town, finding the photograph. And the only way I could really find the photograph was to interact with the French people. So I start with the cafe. That'd be the first place
Yeah.
I
Yep.
go. It's go to the local bar. Everybody's sort of in it. And I would sort of talk a little bit about my vacation. They ask me if I'm on vacation. The other thing I'll bring up, I do speak French. So that was a critical component to this whole thing. So French people like Americans that speak French. It just breaks down all the barriers. They're very open. So I had all these things going for me. One, I had the bicycle. I
Hmm.
love cycling. It's like, the Tour de France. I had a grandfather who fought for them. And,
Right.
and as you know, Mike, though the Americans didn't have a lot of fighting compared to the French or the British, it was very critical at the time they came in.
Yes.
They brought in food, they brought in organization, they brought in railway lines. The Germans at that point knew they couldn't fight this behemoth with all of its resources and
Right.
all of its food and all of its. They knew it was over at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, as you know from all of the stuff that you've read
Yeah.
through. So the Americans are looked at as, um, though they didn't lose 500,000 people or a million people, they lost 50,000. They still are looked at as very pivotal to the French people as finally ending that horrible war.
Right.
Um, do you have any questions at this point?
Oh my God, Brett, I have so many. um,
Yeah. So if you
first,
want to, if
no,
you
no,
want to
no
throw
worries.
something in now,
First, could you hold up that packet of cigarettes again?
sure.
Um, and just to say, like we don't condone smoking here, but
Yeah, no, right.
this is very cool. So for folks, There's a video version to this recording. You're going to be able to catch it on YouTube. So Brett's holding up a 110-year-old packet of Lucky Strike cigarettes with the circle insignia that I remember from my days working at a pharmacy selling cigarettes.
Yeah. Right.
So things have changed, haven't changed that much.
Right.
That's amazing. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
He kept
And
that.
a question for you. So, like you said, being on a bicycle, like one, you like biking. Two, I really like that is that I had never thought of this before, but I think you're correct. Is that by being on a bike, you are much more you're on the ground and you are much more open and approachable to people, and I don't think like as intimidating as a random car rolling
Right.
up, which is what I
Exactly.
do. Yeah.
And
Um,
not only is there that aspect of it, but there's all the logistics of being on a bike. It's not, you just can't go whip somewhere. You have to really think about things. And you're very close to the smells. So when I would ride through a field, I'd have a picture from my grandfather of the same field
oh man.
with it just looked, as you know what these scenes look like. The trees are all gone, huge holes in the a horse kind of ambling through on a little road trying to work its way through the
Right.
and and I would be suddenly surrounded by that, and I could relate being so close when
Yeah.
being on a bike. The other thing was
Mm.
eating. There was one day I um, had a long day, and it was Sunday, and every town I went into, the supermarkets had just closed,
Right.
and I hadn't eaten all day, and I get to an Airbnb which doesn't serve food. It's an Airbnb,
Right.
and I have no food. I'm really getting desperate, and I just started walking up and down the street, knocking on doors, asking for food, and the people would give me food, and so there's all of those logistics of, and of course I'd talk about my grandfather, and it'd be
Yep.
a lot of interaction, and everybody had a story.
So one question I have just
Yeah,
to keep in mind, Brett, is
yeah,
like
yeah,
one thing that fascinates me. You're bicycling across France is
yeah,
the logistics. Like, so you had an Airbnb that you based
yeah,
out of, and so like, how
yeah.
many like I don't mean to pry too much, but
No, no,
like
go ahead. Yeah.
how much clothes did you bring
I
to?
was very I my I had this discussion with my wife, and I said, if you're going to come on this trip and you're going to ride on this trip, you can only take two pair of underwear, and and that killed her from ever going on the trip. So I traveled very, very light,
Yeah.
washed my
Okay.
clothes at night,
Okay.
and I had all the bags on a gravel bike, which is a kind of a touring bike,
Okay.
and I had to plan a lot as to where I could buy food, and
Right.
I prearranged all of the um, nightly nights. So
Okay.
I knew I had to stay at these places because I wasn't going to carry a tent or a
Right.
bag or anything like that.
Yep.
So,
Wow.
so anyway, um, I sort of just worked my way through, and in that process, I went to I went to a lot of the cemeteries,
Hmm.
and the American Cemetery was amazing. It was, I don't, you've been there, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
Remain, yeah.
Hmm.
And it was just becoming more and more emotional. So the more I I did the trip, the more I was thinking about my grandfather and all of the different places that he had visited that I was now visiting.
Right.
And as an example, there was one place he stayed. A billet is where the local civilians rent a place to soldiers,
Okay.
and he had stayed at this billet, and it was really nice, all fixed up, was up on top of a hill. The people had done very well with it, and I rang the front doorbell, and I suddenly realized just I knew he had stayed in this house
Hmm.
when he was 21 years old, and it just dawned on me all at once that my grandfather was in this house smoking cigarettes, planning the next attack, censoring the soldiers' letters. I mean, he
Correct.
had 50 soldiers. He had to go through their letters. And it just hit me. I am not a big emotional guy. I don't cry easily.
Hmm.
And I really, really got extremely emotional. I got a big lump in my throat. And this woman comes to the front and she's looking at me, wondering what's going on here because it was a gate that she had to open. And I finally blurted out, my grandfather slept here as a First World War soldier 107 years ago. And her face softened and she immediately opened the thing. And so, anyways, she showed me all. So I took the exact same pictures that he had taken of the house inside the house. And there was just every day was like that. There was some amazing interaction that struck home that they related to. And as I was saying earlier, they all had a story. Everybody had a story. Be like if you were talking about your grandparents,
Hmm.
um, they were either deported to concentration camps
Yes.
in Germany. They died. They were gunners and they were wounded, and then they ended up fighting in the Second World War,
Mhm.
and then they'd end up in Germany in the Second World War in work camps.
Right.
Everybody had a story.
Yeah. I had,
Everybody had a story.
I had a gentleman. So this past summer, we toured the town of Theme, and
Yeah.
and there was a big, like, it was one of the few urban battles of World War One fought between Americans and Germans, and
Uh-huh.
over a couple of blocks. We've known two very very wonderful French locals,
Yeah.
Ray and Richard,
Yeah.
and and Richard is this older gentleman, like he's in his probably 70s, probably getting close to his 80s, and
Yeah.
so he is just a fountain of knowledge. And
Yeah. I know.
he took us around. He kind of like he kind of took over our tour and took us all around,
Yeah.
showed us everything. But one very poignant thing was that one of the streets was named after a French gentleman, and he pointed to it and he said, "That was my grandfather." And
Oh, is that right?
yeah, and you could see the date that it had the year he was born, and then the date he
Yeah.
died
Yeah.
was 1945.
Yeah.
And he said like
Yeah.
that was my grandfather, and
Yeah.
he died in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah. So
oh man, this is very real.
it's heavy. I know.
Yeah.
And they're very when I've given 2 lectures. I've actually given 3 lectures in France, and it's a very emotional. The people in the audience are very emotional. They sort of hang on every word. In the United States, it's sort of like they were interested in the cycling and they're interested in some of that aspect of it. But everybody's interested in the before and after pictures. So I have a picture of a, a chateau that in the United States they just tear it down and build something else. It
Right.
just didn't make any sense and they reconstructed it to perfect condition. And there's probably I don't know 300 windows in this chateau.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just amazing stories about the reconstruction. So my other part was that the French um, unequivocally were the nicest people I'd ever met.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying they are the nicest people in the world than any other people, but they responded to me because I had a mission. And then as time went on, I was like obsessed with finding stuff. So I go into a town and I wouldn't let up. I would find and one time I came back from tried to find these 5 photographs that were tugboats and they were a bridge, and I just couldn't find it. and no one could find it. I go in the bars, nobody could find it. The chief of police is waiting for me at the hotel.
That's
He's sitting
quite a feeling.
waiting for me
Yeah.
in the foyer, and he said, "I heard you in town." And I said, "That's great." And he had all kinds of information. He had photographs and all kinds. And I said, I'm looking for these 5 photos. He said, "Come with me." And I got into his police car, and we drove all over the place. And he found exactly. And I don't have the pictures with me, but you can put them on your YouTube
Sure,
channel.
of course.
And just scenes like that. And this guy is a First World War One official, and he's your age. He's your age. He's got a son that's 12 years old, and they're just very connected to that war.
It's it's amazing. So, for your ability to speak French opens many doors, but for anybody listening who is thinking of going to France, and maybe you have a similar project that you want to do, or a similar mission to follow in the footsteps of an ancestor, like, don't let the fact that you don't speak French
No,
stop you.
no, you're absolutely right.
A bonjour,
Yeah,
smile,
a
and
smile.
do your best to answer
Yeah,
the question. And I mean,
yeah.
people will
They will.
they'll point you in the right direction. We had
They definitely will, and you don't, because you don't speak French, they will help you out. They'll definitely help you out.
yeah. So I've got to
Yeah.
say, I said the gentleman who took us around theme. Like, I don't know why I was blanking on his name. I said Richard. It's actually Bernard. I'm very sorry, Bernard.
Yeah.
Um, no disrespect meant. But also, like when you like the enthusiasm that you get, and then people hear and they're like, oh, you're here for the war? Like, yes, I'm interested in the history here. And they're like, why don't you come with me? I've got some things to show you. And like,
Yeah.
take you,
Yeah.
they'll take you to
Open
their
sight.
house. Yeah, and it's just amazing. Like,
And a lot of people do speak English. I mean,
Yeah,
they didn't speak English with me because I was speaking French.
right.
But if I had to speak, there are more and more people speaking English that you'll find. I found another thing I found that was sort of unusual. The most I thought the Germans had the best cemeteries. They created a mood that none of the other cemeteries did, because the other cemeteries were so well done. They're
Hmm.
like so perfect.
Hmm.
Germans use black crosses, and the way I was able to find this, I went down this dirt road. You know, didn't know where I was going. I saw this little sign. It said Friedhofer, I think is what the
Hmm.
cemetery is in German. Nobody there, no gift shop, no nobody cutting the grass, nothing. It was just
Right.
this silence. And I come around the corner, and there's the way they had done it with the oak trees growing up out of it. They
Yeah.
created a mood. They created a very sad mood. And it was a great experience for me seeing that. And here they are, the enemy. I felt nothing but compassion and sadness for these humans that were buried there in this black with these black crosses, and
Yeah.
it was a great experience for me. I'm really glad I said that.
I find more and more I visit the old World War I battlefields. Like, I'm really starting to come around and say, like, I also find, to me, the German cemeteries they seem the most appropriate. They're
Yeah,
heavy,
very low key,
very somber,
somber. Yeah,
and
yeah.
they really speak to like this like terrible waste of life.
The horror
And
of it
that
all.
and I
Yeah,
and that being said, like, it's not like I don't enjoy, like, I know that the British created their cemeteries with the idea of creating English gardens, and
Yeah. The French with the roses. Yeah.
yeah, very very much like a
Very
sunny French
gay.
countryside, and the American, we have our like pristine lawn and everything is precise, and
Everything
that was
perfect.
also
Yeah. Yeah.
also stunningly beautiful, and
Yeah.
whenever I go to the Meuse, like almost every summer, like very thankfully, like
Yeah.
I always stop at the Meuse Argonne Cemetery in Romagne.
Yeah.
And
It's
you,
amazing.
yeah, you're just like really, you're in a sea of crosses, and you're just awed by
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
yeah, but the German cemeteries are very very moving, and for anybody who doesn't know, if when you visit German cemeteries, you'll typically see a lot of trees. I think in the past there used to be a lot of oak trees, but
Yeah. Well,
now
they plant oaks purposely because it brings the soul up to heaven.
yes,
That's what it is. It sucks
yeah,
the soul out of the earth and brings it to heaven.
yeah.
That was
I find really really interesting.
yeah, yeah. And
What
the other
is?
thing is that
Oh, go ahead.
The French did not want they wanted them buried there. They did not let the Germans take the Germans back to Germany. And in the negotiation of the armistice, it would make a great movie scene. But the general says, you came here, you fought here, you died here, you stay here. You
Oh,
know, just yeah. And they said to him, the Germans said to him, but that's not fair. And he said, don't talk to me about fairness. So it would make a great movie scene, wouldn't it?
honestly,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But so so there's a lot of German cemeteries there. The other, I guess, the other thing that, definitely to talk about was, as I said, I became more involved in in his life.
Hmm.
So just think of yourself if you took any of your relatives or anybody who would be listening to this, take your relative, no matter what they did. Maybe they worked in a tannery factory. Maybe they were captain of a boat. And you start digging into their life, you suddenly are reconnected to them in a much more meaningful way than when you were just sitting on his lap
Right.
in every once in a while. So so that took place.
So you're there. You're starting to feel this connection with your grandfather, who at 21 years old is a platoon leader in charge of
Yeah,
50
yeah. He's a
American
first lieutenant.
doughboys.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, second lieutenant. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like so the amount of responsibility he had at 21 years old,
It's amazing. Yeah,
Um, so now you're starting to get to know him. What is it like, or what was it like, and what is it like when you take one of his photos and you're able to like basically match almost to the spot of like where he stood to take that
yeah,
photo. You're like here, this is the angle, so he must have been
yeah,
around here.
yeah. Yeah, I would stand probably right where his feet were standing.
Wow,
And
wow,
so I was doing that every day. So every day, Mike, was a new experience. And with that wasn't me just finding a house. I'd knock on the door of the house, I get invited into the house,
mhm,
I get taken around the back of the house so they could, show me whatever they wanted to show me. And it was just every day there was that kind of experience.
yeah,
And and then there were funny experiences where I was drying my underwear on the balcony, and below the balcony was a restaurant, and they all had umbrellas. Everybody was eating on umbrellas. Anyway, I woke up in the morning. People were eating outside, and my underwear was gone. And I looked over, and it was on the umbrella. And I said, "I'm just going to leave it there. That's donated to this particular hotel."
I love it. Yeah,
So there were funny things like that would happen. And as you know, when you travel, things happen. And Um, the other, there was also a theme that went through here, and of course, it's all psychosomatic, I suppose. But everything was happening. I was finding these things, railroad bridges. I was finding all of these things I'd finding, and it was like every day went perfectly. It was
Awesome.
like it was. I couldn't have written the script.
Right.
Just every day went perfectly. Major things would happen, major connections, major friendships, and you just kind of start thinking, how is everything just happening so perfectly? Nothing ever happens so perfectly, and you begin to think that now he's sort of. And I'm not a religious person. I'm not very religious or even spiritual in that matter. But you start, because of all the work you're doing with his
Mhm.
photographs and recreating all of his photographs. He's with you all the time. He's kind of directing you, kind of
Mhm.
telling you where to go.
Mhm.
And I found, just so to take that concept, I come back to the United States. There were two photographs. One was my grandfather receiving the Croix de Guerre, which is this.
Amazing. Yep.
That's the Croix de Guerre. And
French.
I don't have the ribbon.
Mhm.
There was a ribbon with it, and I wished I had the ribbon, but I don't have the ribbon. It's gone.
But that is the one that he was.
That's the one he was awarded. He was
That's
awarded this.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I come home. There's a photograph of him being someone take, and I think it was taken by the military,
Okay.
um, and he saved that photograph and he put it in his scrapbook. It wasn't taken by him, and he's getting it pinned on by not Pershing, but Pershing was there that for that ceremony. He
Wow.
was actually there for that ceremony. So I come home. I just had a bike ride. I'm lying on the bed, tired, and I got the laptop on. I'm just going through YouTube, and I Google First World War, and then I suddenly see Pershing, and I start seeing all these people marching around, and then bango! Suddenly, just right in front of me is my grandfather in a
Wow.
movie, in a movie, getting this award pinned on him.
That day. Yeah. Somebody else
Yeah,
recorded it on film.
someone else recorded it. Yeah, they had the
Yep.
and so there was that, and I didn't go to the archives. I didn't fly down to Washington, and I didn't do chat GBT. I just was lying on my back, going through this stuff, and just kind of just for entertainment, and bang, there it was. But the other thing that was amazing, he took a pic. So when they buried their dead, they didn't bury them in Romania.
No.
That was later. That the Romania is a big cemetery. It's all organized. It was done
Mhm.
after the war, quite a bit after the war. So they buried them in anywhere in these little towns. They'd bury them in fields,
Yep.
and usually near a church. And so he has a picture of people being buried at a church in Beauvrain, small town.
Okay.
He So again, I come back from a bike ride. I'm lying on the bed. I'm going through, and up pops a ceremony of the soldiers, American soldiers being buried, of the same photograph that my father took.
Amazing. Amazing.
Right, and
Mhm.
it's incredible. The French are involved. They're throwing flowers into the graves, but it's as I looked at the walls in the photograph, I stood on that wall and took the photograph that my grandfather took.
That he took. Wow. Yeah.
And I didn't hardly look for this thing. This thing just suddenly appeared on my
Just pops up. Yeah.
laptop. It was very surrealistic to be.
Yeah.
So there was that. So um, after everything was done, I had sent emails to these maybe 30 people. And I would write every day I would write a little caption what I did, and I would send the photographs.
Okay.
I'd show the burned out something, and then it all different today.
Right. Right.
And people loved it. I was swarmed with, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Look at that. Look at how awful that church looked, and look at it now. It's all reconstructed. And then, I had pictures of the local French people, and they love the stories. They love the before and after pictures. So when I went back, I didn't want to just let it go. I had done this. If I just let it go, then it just goes. It never really happened. It's
Mhm.
just between me and my grandfather, and that would be it. So my background is in sales, in the high tech world,
Okay.
which with sales in the high tech world they're long sales. They're very technically oriented, a lot of presentations. So I
Okay.
did a lot of that stuff, presentations and things. And so I put together a presentation, and I contacted some museums, and sure enough, they wanted to hear me. And so I presented at the Cantigny Museum in Chicago.
Okay.
Uh, and then I went to the First World War Museum in Kansas City.
All right.
The big, and that's the biggest one in the United States. And I presented there. And then I presented in France at a chateau. It wasn't a museum, but it was a big chateau. And there were, a lot of people there, 150 people or something. And I presented there in French, but I had to read the French. I'm not good enough to just wing it like I could with Kansas City.
Still very,
Um,
very impressive, Brett.
yeah, and I read it, and again, it was just every French person had to shake my hand before they left. It was really very, 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 very moving. And and then I finally saw that the album that my grandfather had was getting ruined. I
Mm,
kept turning the page. You know how it is. You just
sure.
use it so much. And I said, I don't want this to end up in an attic. I don't know where to put it. I need to put it in a safe place, some place where it's going to be appreciated.
Right.
So I approached the American museums, and um, a lot of them don't take any more stuff. It's as a policy. They have too much stuff. They get too much donated, and they can't deal with it. And I thought Cantigny would definitely take it because my
Right.
grandfather fought there,
Right.
and he was awarded the medal there. And he was part of the Big Red One, which is the first division called the Big Red One.
Hmm. Pershing's favorite.
And yeah, and I just thought that for sure they'd take it. In fact, when somebody the archive person didn't want it, I notified the CEO thinking, please don't let this go.
Right.
Don't, you're the Cantigny Museum. You should have this album that's all about Cantigny. And I never heard back from them. So
That's too bad.
I started talking to French museums, and the response was unbelievable. This is what we'll do. We'll archive it. We're going to use it for research. We're going to put it on online so people can look at it. We're going to do, it's going to be hermetically sealed,
Yeah.
and sure enough, they did an exhibition, a major exhibition, which they did, but it's permanent. They reconstructed foxholes on the lawn of the museum.
And is this a
The
museum
Museum of
at
Mo,
Mo?
MEAU. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mo.
Which
Have
for
you been there?
folks, yes, I was just there this summer for the very first time. So for folks listening, if you haven't been, it's the First World War Museum at Mo,
Mo.
MEAUX,
Yeah,
and it's
MEAUX.
only, God, I can't even think. I don't
50
think
miles from Paris.
it's like an hour's drive
Yeah,
out of
hours drive. Yeah,
yeah. Fantastic museum.
it
And so
is.
I was there. this summer, having
Oh,
just having met you at the end of June, and when you were giving your talk and everything, and then
yeah.
I was at that museum probably 3 weeks later, and
Oh, fantastic. Did you see the exhibition outside?
this is the trench line
The
outside, right?
trench lines, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I walked. I had
So
no idea that your
there's an
grandfather.
observation post that they have,
Yeah,
and they took it from his photograph. They designed it from his photograph.
that is amazing,
Isn't that
and I
cool? Yeah,
probably stood in it, and because I
yeah, yeah,
looked at everything and
yeah,
had
yeah,
no
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, no idea. That was my grandfather's, and I think they had a little plaque dedicated to him.
Gosh, man. God.
It was taken from his photograph.
So what are
So
the
anyway,
fonts?
it's
Like,
home. It's found its way home. Um, my grandfather would be happy. It's in France. My grandfather really liked France. He tried to learn French.
okay.
He had a lot of civilian friends. I mean, as an example, while he was training, he met a French pilot, and the pilot said, "You wanted to?" They were very kind to Americans.
This is a
The,
great story.
yeah, the
Yes.
pilot said, "Do you want to go for a ride?" And a 21-year-old kid in 1917 from Weymouth, sure, I'll go for a ride. So he went up in the air, they flew around, they came back, and he said, "Come back to my house for dinner. I want you to meet my family."
Oh, this
So
day
my
is just getting
grandfather,
better.
yeah, getting back, yeah, I get a good meal out of it. And so he goes back. Immediately, his parents, he had a sister, and she was 18. And he took a picture of her. She was very pretty, and immediately started asking him how old he was, what he did for a living. And then they said to him that their daughter was desirous of his hand. That's how he put it in his letter. Desirous of his hand, meaning she would like to marry you.
Like on the spot.
And he said, "Well, I'm not ready for that." Anyway, he he was happy to get out of there alive, but it just shows you the reality. I mean, you look at today where we have a matches with our we find wives, and back then it was survival.
Yes.
There were no all the men were dead. All the men of her age were dead.
Hmm.
It was really it was a marriage of survival and convenience, and but he has a bunch of funny stories like that, my grandfather. Yeah.
Now, do you know if was your grandfather ever able to return to France? Like,
Yes, he did. He went
really?
back for 6 months and
Okay.
drove around in a Volkswagen Bug.
Really?
How's that for yeah, a
So
little Volkswagen Bug.
post World War
Yeah,
II,
a
right?
19 I think he did it in 1960.
Oh, amazing. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. So a lot,
1959.
I mean, there's a lot of World War One stuff left
Mm,
now in France, but
mm,
um,
mm.
but I can only imagine in 1960, the villages would have been rebuilt, but like a lot of stuff would have still been out there in the
Been fresh.
fields.
Yeah.
Yeah, really
And then
fresh. Exactly.
he found people that he stayed at their places, and he found people that was a waitress, that he found people that worked for the American army, that stay, obviously they're French, they stayed there. So yeah, he had a grand old time. He walked he after he got out of the war, he got polio.
Okay.
So he had a pretty bad limp,
Okay.
and so he couldn't walk around as easily as he could. And also his son died as a U.S. Marine pilot in the Pacific,
Hmm.
fighting in the Pacific. So he had a his other daughter died of scarlet fever.
Oh,
It wasn't an easy life.
right. Right.
There was a lot of things that
Yeah. Hard times.
yeah, yeah. Let me see if there's any other. there's so much to talk about. There's so many things that
I
in
know.
a couple
I
of
know.
minutes here.
What so Brett, one question I have for you is what was your most emotional moment? Was it when you were there at that house and you made that first?
I think it was the house.
Okay.
Because I hadn't really prepared myself for what I was getting into. It was my first real interaction
Hmm.
with a French person.
Yeah.
You know, I had taken before I met her, I had taken a couple of pictures of some streets and some street scenes that he had taken, and this one was suddenly, it was I was sort of unprepared, and for what I was actually dealing with, and then it just hit me. So I would say, yeah, that was definitely the most emotional. And the other one was definitely the German cemetery.
Yeah. Yes.
That was right up there, the German cemetery.
And
Yeah.
could you tell us about the nature of your grandfather's wound? It was
Yeah, he was the Croix de Guerre. He received the Croix de Guerre. His unit, which were all engineers, an artillery shell, and I guess the artillery shell that just was they feared. They said it was the most horrible thing. Blew up in his group, and he got a concussion, and some people were really hurt with their limbs. They couldn't walk, they couldn't, and he carried them back to the medical tent, or at least away from, and then he fell over from his concussion, and that's why they gave him, all of his people that reported to him in that group and saw what he had done, uh, were impressed that he had tried to save them even though he was hurt himself. So that that was the first time. The second time was in the Somme,
okay.
and he was a piece of fragment from a artillery shell had wounded his foot, had,
Okay.
had wounded the side of his foot. So he went to a hospital in southern France, not in southern, south of Paris, and he was there. And there's some great pictures. That's another trip I'd like to do, is go to that area and
Hmm.
see the hospital and stuff like that. But that's another day. And he wrote a letter to his mother, and in his letter he said, "Mother, I have some good." He wrote her almost every day. "I have some good news for you. The doctor has said that I won't be able to return to service. The wound is not will not enable me to be back into service,
Wow.
and I'm leaving for the United States next, several weeks." So that's a letter every mother wants to get,
Sure.
because it was about 6 weeks, I think, on average. If you went to the front, you had 6 weeks of activity. I mean, you may go for 2 weeks and go away for 2 weeks, but
Hmm.
you had 6 weeks before the average that you would die.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, according to the things that I've been reading.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was, it was not a good scene. I
So
mean, just Cantigny itself was not a major battle, but they lost the first day. They lost roughly 180 people, which is not big compared to the 40,000 the French would lose in some of
sure.
the battles. But then they lost 400 people holding on to the town.
That right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, you it was a war of taking some territory and then trying to hold on to the territory and losing your life holding on to the territory. And it was just this back and forth,
Right.
and it created, and there's some horrible stories about the French repeating the same mistakes, um, rushing the Germans and repeating the same mistakes and losing. They would lose in 1 week as many as we did in the whole war. The French would,
Yes.
so it was really pretty bad.
Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting about Cantigny is the marshal was the general. So he was the general for that battle.
Okay.
General Marshall, and he later went on to become to design the Marshall Plan in World War II.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
So the Marshall
George
Plan was
Marshall.
really key because what the Americans realized, and smartly so, and I you can almost see how we screwed up in the Iraq War by isolating half the country. I don't really the Shiites but we didn't recognize half the country.
Right.
Whereas, and therefore there was the resistance. That resistance kept going on in the cities in Iraq. But like in the Second World War and the Marshall Plan, we're not going to repeat what we did in the First World War. We're not going to penalize the Germans. We're going to get them productive, back to work, and happy. And that's what he was responsible for. General Marshall was responsible for that philosophy.
Yes. Yeah. It's also, I think, I don't know if the Marshall Plan was used or as in the back of someone's mind, but it's my understanding of the Irish Troubles, of which I am no expert, but
Right.
been told is that the part of the peace plan, all of the peace accords in the 90s, that it came about with an infusion of like jobs into the Irish economy that suddenly people are working and they feel much more hopeful, and that had a dampening effect on the violence as well. Like that's what I've been told. I'm not an expert on the Irish Troubles, but I could see a kind of like a throwback to that Marshall Plan of like, hey, let's not just stomp on these Germans with
we can't put them all in jail.
Right. We have to give them hope here,
You got to give them hope. They can't put them all in jail, no matter how bad it's been and how bad they were. We got to get them on our side and productive. So that was a big. So the Cantigny definitely was. It was the first war or battle that was all American, and Pershing was not going to have his troops, American troops, reporting into French generals.
Correct.
He was not going to have that happen. And Pershing was, as I read about him, he's a pretty amazing person. So when my grandfather joined the Army, he was there were 200,000 recruits. When he sailed home, there were 2 million.
Yes.
2 years. Now that's an amazing accomplishment.
Huge ramp.
The other thing the Americans did very well, our country was in the process of being developed with infrastructure. Everything was about infrastructure. And so they could bring that infrastructure, and they redid a lot of the rail lines that the French built because they were too narrow or so whatever. And they said if we're gonna move stuff around, we got to do it. We got to do it. They they had the trucks, they had the roads.
Yes. And then at the end of the war, my understanding as well, I may be wrong on this, but I believe that all of those trucks, all of that equipment, they're all just like, there you go, it's all yours. We're
yeah. They must have loved that.
Yeah, I've read it. Yeah.
And just one last comment is that I would visit places asking them about this, where I could find this photograph. And the guy would say, come into my backyard. And he would show me a German bunker in his backyard. So that's how close everything is.
Yeah.
When I gave the speech in France, guy comes up with an American helmet from 1917 that he found in his garden.
Man.
Just stuff, they all just, it's just close to them.
Yeah, it is. And to share it with you. You know, like it's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, and they want to share it.
So
And
Brett, you were just there just a couple of weeks ago,
yes,
and you gave a talk on your
yes,
travel.
I gave a talk. It was really wonderful. It was in Montdidier. Montdidier was leveled in 1917,
Okay,
built up, leveled in 1941
really?
by the
Okay.
yeah. So they've been through hell there. They've always been through,
Yeah.
and it was just again, I gave a talk, and they took me out to dinner. They took me, I had breakfasts with them. There's one guy, and you and I need to talk because I have a ton of information for you.
Oh, great.
Really detailed information on Cantigny, which I'll send to you, and you should just keep it and file it.
Sure.
War plans and just all this. So I one day I spent traipsing around. You would have loved it. Traipsing around Cantigny. This guy knew where all the trenches were. He knew he knew where Company A had hiked. Yeah, he knew exactly where Company A had hiked and to march up into Cantigny.
Yeah.
So, and then I had lunch with him and his wife, and late lunch, like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I got all this information. I haven't even looked at it yet. I need a rainy, snowy day to really start getting into it. Yeah.
Well, I think next week we might have rainy days, so hopefully
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
works out
Start,
for you.
but I'm gonna definitely send it to you.
Oh my God. Yes.
It's digital, so it's
Sure.
easy to
Oh,
send. Yeah,
perfect. My God.
yeah,
Amazing. Well, as in a podcast first, Brett, I think we're gonna have to get together in downtown for a coffee or
yeah,
something
yeah. Definitely.
soon.
No, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Brett, do
Well,
you
thank you.
have,
I'm honored that you asked me to
yeah,
do this. I appreciate it. And as I say, it's um, I'd be willing to help in any manner.
yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I hope
Uh,
we'll get together soon and
yeah,
physically
yeah,
and talk
yeah,
and I hope gosh, I hope to hear of more of your trips over there, and I hope that
yeah,
our paths cross over there
yeah.
sometime soon.
Definitely, that'd be great to cross over there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll
I
be
mean,
fantastic.
I say I'm going to go over there next summer.
Okay.
If you're over there, maybe we can get
Oh,
together.
you got it.
Yes,
You got it.
spend a
Oh,
couple of days.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All
All
right.
right.
All right. Thank you, Mike.